all you're going to do is take away from profits, which are already inadequate, and productive investment, which is already inadequate. And don't forget that France is a country with a budget deficit of 5% of GDP or more, pushing 6, and debt to GDP ratios of 110. And the European Commission is telling them they have to cut their basic balance, which is really the budget deficit before interest rates, to put it simply. They have to cut that by 0.5 percentage point per year of GDP, which is a huge contraction. Macron said he was going to do it. Now, I mean, you might as well hope for snow in the Sahara in August, frankly.
David, we all know this expression, it's the economy stupid, but it seems that here again it's an election where that didn't really confirm this expression, because a lot of economic data are actually better in France. When unemployment is at very, very low compared to the numbers we had for decades, France being the top destination for foreign investment in Europe, etc., etc. So how do they resolve this? That obviously the French public doesn't vote on this economic data, and there's sort of discontent brewing in the country. That seems to be something that is extremely hard for the centrist parties to address. So how can they kind of come back on the front of the political stage there to kind of try to fend off the extremes?
Well, the only thing they could really do to enfranchise young people and make them interested again in politics, as opposed to the political debate about the extremes, extreme left and extreme right, which is not about economics, it's really about racism and a lot of other things. What they could do is get the economy moving. You're quite right to say that French unemployment is very low. In fact, the whole of Europe's unemployment is very low. But you've got to remember that at the background of that, productivity is zero, because the European economy is hardly growing. And if you're going to have 6% unemployment or historic lows throughout the European community, you have to ask yourself, well, how did I get there? And the answer is you got there by having terrible productivity figures. The only way to get people back, enthusiastic about the economy, enthusiastic about the country, is to actually give them prospects of jobs, growth, and an individual career path, which makes sense. That can only come from a growing economy. And unfortunately, France and a lot of other European countries are busy going the opposite way.
David, I mean, the longer it takes then to form a government, the longer it's going to ultimately take to get any of this pretty much done. I mean, what are the risks you really see here, even just in the short term, really, whether it be on a global scale, cooperation, agreements, market impact?
It's very strange, isn't it, that the market impact is, I mean, we talk about it a lot, but it actually doesn't happen a lot. If you look at the spread on French sovereign debt to German sovereign debt, you would have expected that to blow out from, say, 70 basis points to about 120 basis points on the back of the sort of news that any form of policies to correct the fiscal deficits, to comply with European regulations, that this thing was actually going to happen. But actually nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. Now, my view is that it will happen. It will happen when it comes home that actually political paralysis in France is economic paralysis in France. Economic paralysis in France means that France is going to be on a trajectory which is in direct contradiction to its undertaking in Europe. And the French politicians, being locked in a tussle about themselves in the center of the Assemblée Nationale, will just wave two fingers at it. And eventually that will come home to roost with the euro. And frankly, in a comparison between Italy and France, Italy will look like an angel, though angels they are not, and France will look like the devils.